So we're going to try something new today. Instead of me sharing my screen with the slides, good morning, Jalen. What I'm going to do instead is we're going to try a, what's it called? Nearpod presentation, which means that I'll give you all a code and you will go to join.nearpod.com. Enter that code and the slide should appear on your screen. I'll still be advancing them at our pace, but this will give you an opportunity to, well, you'll see. It'll give us opportunities to be more engaged. And I appreciate Kiki and Gabriella for having their cameras on. Good morning, Stephanie. I see that Gabby, Jalen, and Castro have joined. Thank you so much. Good morning, Joseph. So per usual, you do have a warm-up in Canvas. Of course, this is Unit 1, Day 3. So you just scroll down to Day 3, which is August 26th, 2020, and go ahead and knock out that warm-up. For those of you who are just joining, today we're trying something new. I want you to go to join.nearpod.com. Good morning, Ayana.
Good morning.
Once you're at join.nearpod.com, go ahead and enter the code YFIKG. I just sent it to the chat, and that will allow you to connect to our presentation for the day. I see Kiescence has just joined us as well. I know you guys are trying to do multiple things. You're trying to do the warm up. You're trying to join the Nearpod. So we'll take until 10:28. At 10:28, you should have done the warm up and joined the presentation. Thank you, Alicia.
Hello.
Yes. Hi, Joseph.
Can I talk to you after class?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning.
So next 3 minutes, people, you should have completed the warm-up. And then for those of you who are just joining, I'll send it to the chat one more time. But today we're trying something new, which will allow us to be a little bit more engaged than we have been. So I'm going to ask you to go to join.nearpod.com and enter the code YFIKG to join our presentation. So far, I see Ayana, Alicia, Gabby, Jalen, Castro, Kiki, and Omari. And good morning.
It's telling me the code is invalid.
For the Nearpod?
Yeah.
Okay, that's odd. Most people, everybody else has been able to join. Why are you doing capitals? I don't know if it might be case sensitive. So try capital letters.
Yeah, it's capitals. I just copied and pasted.
Okay. Make sure you don't have any spaces. Just try to type it in. Don't copy and paste. Just do YFIKG. Did it work, Adrian? Let's see. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So I'll give you all a few more minutes to finish up. I think we've got 11 of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So everybody has joined the Nearpod, but if you're still working on the warm up, I'll give you a few minutes. And I just want to say briefly that it's my goal as your teacher to not only help you approach mastery in biology, but also to help you all feel supported in your holistic development as young people as well. And I know we have a lot going on in our country, and you may be aware that this past Sunday, another unarmed Black man was shot by the police. I know opinions range on this topic, and by no means am I an authority, and I don't know all that there is to know. in many ways, I'm just like you on many of these topics. I'm a student and I'm trying to learn more, but I do want you all to know that I'm here to be supportive of you all. If you want to talk about anything that's going on, and if you just want to get some stuff off of your mind or off of your chest, then I'm definitely here to talk. And even if you just need me to listen, I'm happy to do that as well. So I say that to say, as young people, I know that there's a lot being asked of you right now in 2020. You're being asked to do school from home, which is something that vast majority of people, in our country have never had to do. You're being asked to watch people be shot on TV and on social media, which is just unbelievably traumatizing, and it can be traumatizing. And you're also being asked to just kind of go about your life like none of that is happening, and I don't think that that's fair. So if you all want to talk about any of these subjects, and we can try to relate it back to biology, I think that's what will make biology a bit more interesting for some of you who may not be as interested as others. But if you want to talk about these things, please do not hesitate to bring them up. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I am thinking about these things. It is hard for me as well. I'm probably I won't tell you my exact age, but I'm not old. So I'm still pretty young. I'm still watching these things play out in front of me in many ways, in the same ways that you all are. So I know that it can be very difficult and it can be sad. So it's always important that you have people in your corner and people you can talk through these things with. And just know that I want to be one of those people for you. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. Again, I want to thank the three of you who have your cameras on right now: Gabby, Kiki, Ayana. I really appreciate that. The cool thing about this is that I don't have to share my screen, and you all are able to still see the slides, and we can move at our own pace. And you'll also see throughout today's presentation that we will have some opportunities for direct engagement. But I still want you all to be engaged and to speak with me. So can someone please volunteer to read the objectives for the day? Good morning, Dante. I need you to go to join.nearpod.com and enter the code YFIKG. But I'm waiting for somebody to go ahead and read our objectives for us, please. They should be on your screen because 11 of the 12 of you are on the Nearpod presentation.
Yeah, I'll read it.
Thank you.
What is that?
Biologists will be able to.
Biologists will be able to describe the structure and function of nucleic. Wait, how do you say that?
Nucleic acids.
Nucleic acids by comparing both types. What is the role of nucleic acids in all living organisms?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jalen, for stepping up and reading for us. I know I'm not alone when I say that I appreciate it, and you did wonderfully. So today we're thinking about nucleic acids and proteins specifically. Now, you all are my honor students, so I'm going to push your thinking on these subjects just a little bit more, and we're going to start to think about all the ways that these two specific biomolecules are related, and one of the most important facets of biology. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Yesterday, we talked about carbohydrates and lipids, and we'll do a little bit of review about those two as well. Okay, so those are our four biological macromolecules, and the two that we will discuss today are of the utmost importance, and you will see why. Oh, let's see if this works. Oh, I was afraid of that.
It's a dog.
What's a dog?
The dog with Kiki.
Oh, I didn't see it.
I like your dog.
Oh, she's cute.
Okay, so I was afraid of that, but that's okay. Let's see if I can improvise. So in order to go through this slide, I will have to share my screen because the slide is set up so that the boxes disappear. So I'll share my screen briefly. Okay. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, like I said, yesterday we talked about carbohydrates and lipids, and we really want to be able to categorize in 4 different categories each of our 4 different biological compounds. We should know the monomer, we should know the elements that make up the carbohydrates and the lipids, and we should also know their function. And lastly, we should be able to provide examples of each of them. If you can really memorize this table, and in fact, if you have your notes out, as you should, I would encourage you to go ahead and create this table. I'll give you some time to do that. But if you can memorize this table, then this first unit is going to be a lot easier for you to do and to understand and to master. Okay, so this is what we really need to know about each of the 4 biological macromolecules. So I'll start with box number 1. What's the monomer for a carbohydrate? If you have your notes out, you should be able to go back and look at yesterday's notes. Excuse me. I'll ask one more time. What's the monomer for a carbohydrate?
1.
Yeah, box 1. What is it? Uh-oh. This is my concern. I hope that you all are taking strong notes. I have no way of actually seeing them right now. And I don't want to have to ask you all to submit your notes, but it seems like we maybe do need to consider that.
Is it macroride?
Monosaccharides?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's true. So, and we can really just say glucose because monosaccharide is a big word, but glucose is a monosaccharide. All right. So, again, please, 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 if you write nothing else down this entire week, this is what you should have. Okay. And we're going to come back to this slide after we introduce nucleic acids and proteins today. But this is the biggest takeaway from Unit 1. All right. So you need to be able to describe for each of our 4 biological compounds what their monomer is, what elements make them up, what the function is, and some examples. All right, I think that was Gabby, so thank you for that, Gabby. Box number 2, what elements make up carbohydrates?
Carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen.
Excellent. And to say a little bit more about that, what's the ratio for a carbohydrate that these elements appear in?
1 to 1.
1 to 2.
1 to 2 to 1. Excellent. All right, so the 1 to 2 to 1 ratio is important. Well, I'll talk about that after box 6. But let's think about box 3 first. What's the function of a carbohydrate? What do they do for us?
To give you quick energy.
Quick energy. And there's something else that we can also think of.
Cell structure.
Yes, excellent.
Okay.
They provide quick energy and structure to the cell structure. Okay, so like I said yesterday, our bodies and the bodies of most animals, even insects, have some sort of skeleton. Insects have what's called an exoskeleton, but we have an internal skeleton that gives our bodies structure and allow us to stand up. Plants obviously don't have bones or a skeleton, so they rely on these carbohydrates to give them that structure. And we'll talk more about that in our next unit. And then lastly, box number 4, what are some examples of carbohydrates?
Bananas.
Okay, what in a banana?
Huh?
What exactly is in a banana that would be considered a carbohydrate?
Potassium.
Carb.
Not potassium. Potassium is an element.
I have no idea.
Okay. Anybody have any thoughts on this?
Can you repeat the question?
So we were thinking about the examples of carbohydrates. And I just removed the box, so you all should be able to see it. But we've got 4 primary examples. And what you'll notice is that I've underlined the letters OSE in glucose, sucrose, and fructose. And so when you see those letters OSE, that should tell you that we're talking about a sugar. We're talking about a carbohydrate. That's a big, big hint. Do make sure, please, that you write down those examples: glycogen, sucrose, fructose, and starch. Those are primary examples of carbohydrates. Okay. So I'm glad we're doing this for sure, because it seems like some of this information was missed yesterday, and that's my fault. I'll take responsibility for that. Okay. Lipids. Does anybody remember what the monomer of a lipid is?
Doesn't it start with the P?
There is an example of a lipid that starts with a P, but not the monomer. Remember, it's the thing that looks like an E. Remember me saying that? It looks like a capital letter E.
Fatty acid.
3 fatty acid tails.
Oh.
That's the monomer for a lipid. I'm going to slow down a little bit so that you all can really take notes on this. And if I'm ever moving too fast, I think I do have a tendency to move fast. At least that's what some of my other students have told me. So if I'm moving or talking too quickly, please do remind me to slow down. I won't take offense to it. Okay, and then what are the elements that make up a lipid?
Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Exactly. Okay, so the biggest difference between carbohydrates and lipids, because they do have the same exact elements, the difference is that in a carbohydrate, we have the 1:2:1 ratio. That ratio is not present in lipids. Okay, and what is the function of a lipid? What do they do what do they provide for living organisms?
They store in energy.
They store energy, so they provide long-term energy. They also make up the cellular membrane, which is the outermost layer of the cell. We'll talk more about that in our next unit as well. So we see another difference, and hopefully you all did complete that yesterday's activity, which asked you to list some of the differences between carbs and lipids and some of the similarities as well. But we see they both provide energy, but carbohydrates provide quick energy, energy that you want to use in the next 24 hours, whereas lipids provide long-term energy. All right, and our last box, number 8, Ayana has already mentioned that one example of a lipid starts with a P. Does anybody know what that full word is, or does anybody know any other examples of lipids?
I don't know how to spell it, but it's right here in my notes. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but it's right here in my notes.
Ain't it phospholipids or something?
Exactly. Thank you, Jalen. Phospholipids. That's a primary example. What else?
Fat and oil.
Fats and oils. Yep. Exactly. So we've got waxes, fats, oils are an example that's not listed there, but you might want to write it in your chart. And then phospholipids. Shout out Ayana and Jalen for tag teaming on that one. And then steroids as well. Steroids are lipids. Important to note, well, not really that important, but just kind of interesting to know. Some steroids are, never mind. We'll talk more about that later after today's lesson. Okay, so again, this chart is the biggest takeaway of this unit. If you can really memorize this chart and learn what makes each of these biological compounds different and what makes each of them similar, you are in a great place to do very well this unit. All right, so all of the activities are going to, in some way, ask you to compare and contrast them. And the more you can really understand what makes them different and what makes them similar, the better you'll be able to do. So I really highly encourage you all to take a picture of this chart, screenshot it, write it down, whatever you need to do so that you can come back to it. Okay. What's next? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing here and go back to the Nearpod. I'm sorry that I had to switch for a second. Am I recording? Oh, good. Okay. Okay, so I see all of you are still in the Nearpod, and that's where I want to redirect your attention. So I'll move. Okay, so essentially this Nearpod gives us so many different opportunities to be more engaged, and it gives me an opportunity to know what you all know and what you don't yet know. And of course, the things that you don't yet know are ultimately going to be on me. And it's my job as your teacher to help you overcome those struggles. So one of the things that we're going to be able to do with Nearpod is take brief quizzes. I'm not going, this isn't going in the grade book. This is just going to help me better understand what you do and don't know. So you'll have 3 minutes. Can someone just tell me that if they are able to see this on their screen? Just a brief acknowledgement. Yes or no? Anybody, somebody, please.
Yep.
Thank you, Adrian. All right. So you'll have 3 minutes to complete this quiz. That should be plenty of time. There are only 9 questions, and they're very simple. All you have to do is tell me, is it a carbohydrate, is it a lipid, or is it both? Okay, a minute left. 1 more minute. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you are done. 5 of you are done. under 30 seconds now, so go ahead and try to finish up. Okay, so it looks like we got, not sure, is there a way for me to see? We got 75% of them correct. Looks like question number 3 gave us the most problems. It says, give the cell structure. Which one would that be? The correct answer was carbohydrates. I think many of you, let's see if I can look at the answers. Yeah, many of you said both to that. And the reason being that lipids do provide, they're a part of the cell membrane. But when we see the word cell structure, we want to really be thinking about carbohydrates. So the answer C, both, it's not a horrible answer in that case. It also looks like question 7 gave us some problems as well. So glycogen, carbohydrate, lipid, or both. That was one of the examples provided for carbohydrates. So that one was A.
Is there a way to see what I got?
I'm not sure. I don't know it. Let's see if I'm experimenting with this right alongside you all. So I'm not exactly sure what student view looks like, but I think I have the opportunity to change to student view. So give me 1 second. Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know. I can tell you that Jose, Alicia, Stephanie got all of them correct. So congratulations to those folks. And that's not to make anybody feel competitive or feel bad. This is not going in the grade book. Like I said, this is just to help me understand where we are strong and where we still have some work to do. So it looks like the examples column is going to be important for you all. Try to remember what some of those examples are. Okay. So after this next slide, it's going to take you to a slide where you all are able to type, and it'll display your response on the screen for everyone to see. But the question is, what makes us all unique? And I want you to think about this from a biological perspective, but you can also contribute to this question or answer this question from a sociological perspective or a demographic perspective or an experiential or historic perspective, whatever you want to say. Let's just try to think about all the ways that all of us are unique. If you look in this picture, it's very clear that this is a diverse group of individuals here, but even within our own 15-person class, we've got a pretty high amount of diversity from what I can tell. And I'm not just talking about racial and ethnic diversity either. There's so many different ways that we are all different. And I want you all to think through that. So I'll give you about 30 more seconds because I just talked for about 30 seconds. And I want you to think, and then we'll share out. Okay. All right, so go ahead and share your thoughts. And it also gives you an opportunity to share images as well, if you're not trying to do words. Okay, key essence says DNA. Personality. actions, opinions, color of their skin. What makes us all unique is having different features, looks, and traits. Your looks, genes, way of life, hair texture. Our brain, by the way we think. Ethnicity. Okay. Oh, you can even go in and like other people's posts. That's cool. Okay, so let's talk about this. Obviously, you all can see what everybody else has responded. Kies has got us off to a very strong start. She said DNA, and that in many ways captures, most of the other responses as well. But tell me your thoughts on this question. So in science, we have this ongoing debate, and it's been going on for centuries, about the difference between nature and nurture. You'll hear this referred to as nature versus nurture. What do you all think about that? Nature means essentially what you're born with, your innate qualities, your DNA. And nurture is how you are reared, how you grow up, your environment. So what do you all think? Which one is more important in determining what a person is like? Nature or nurture?
Nature.
Nurture.
There's no correct answer here, by the way.
I'm
So just
confused.
make a case for yourself. Did you say you're confused, Diana?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nature is the things that it's like what is most natural to you. It's how you were born. It's the things that you really can't change. So we all have specific genes that we are born with. Half of them come from our mom, half of them come from our dad, and ultimately they contribute to things like our hair texture, our skin color. But then you also have nurture, which is basically how you are raised and the things you're exposed to and your environment. So your skin color is a good example of how both of them contribute. For example, a person might be born a specific skin color, and that's a result of their DNA. But over time, that person might be exposed to more sun, depending on where they live, or depending on what outdoor activities they're involved in, and that can change their skin color. So, do we see how both of them are contributing ultimately to that quality? Do you get that, Ayana?
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, someone make a case one way or another. Which one do we think is more important or more influential, I should say?
I think people.
Nurture.
I think humans have everybody has natural instincts. So everybody like you can't control it. I mean, you could stuff them down, but like everybody's always gonna have natural instincts. So I think nature's more influential.
Okay. I heard someone say nurture. Do they want to make a counterpoint? No. Thought I heard someone say nurture.
I thought I heard someone say it too.
Okay. Well, I guess Adrian wins that one then. So there's like I said, this is an ongoing debate, and there's really no right or wrong answer. In almost every case you can think of, there is some contribution being made by a person's DNA. And I think, let's see, who said it? Alicia said personality is part of what makes us different. Personality ultimately is a result of your brain chemistry, and that is also a result of your DNA. But we also know that personality can be a result of the things you're exposed to and the opinions you come to have, and your parents' opinions and your religion and all these other things. So ultimately, I think we just have to meet in the middle with that one. There might not be a consensus on which one is more or less influential. Okay. And I'm a little bit behind, but that's okay. So today we're introducing the other two organic compounds, nucleic acids and proteins. We're going to start with nucleic acids. I'm not exactly sure if this is going to work. Let me see if
I was writing down something.
I'm going to go back. I just think, yeah, okay. So I realized that in Nearpod, it doesn't play images unless you embed them directly into the Nearpod. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to end this session. And I'll keep that in mind as I design my slides next time. But now I'm going to present my screen and we'll just pick up from Google Slides. Okay. So keep in mind, we will be looking at that same chart tomorrow. And one of the columns in that chart is function. So please make sure that you have this written down. Nucleic acids, which are DNA and RNA, they contain the genetic information which controls the production of proteins and all other cellular activities. I will let that sink in and give you all time to write. Okay. So this is extremely important, and in my opinion, this is probably DNA is probably the most important of the four organic compounds. But we really cannot separate nucleic acids from proteins, and the reason for that being, well, hold on, on my other slide, my slides are out of order. Give me 1 second. Oh. Okay. The reason we can't separate nucleic acids from proteins is that DNA provides the instructions to make proteins. So I know there's a lot going on in this GIF and it moves quickly, but what you can see is that DNA leads to RNA, which then makes proteins. Okay, so DNA is that original instruction book or instruction manual or recipe, whatever you want to call it. DNA provides the instructions to make proteins. And we can really think of it like a meal. If DNA is the recipe, then proteins are the actual meal.
What exactly is RNA?
Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between the two of them in the next slide. But just keep this, and thank you for asking that question. But just keep this slide in mind as we go on. Okay, so this is looking ahead a little bit, and this is going to be something that we talk about ad nauseum about halfway through the course. But I do want to introduce this concept to you because we really cannot separate nucleic acids and proteins. Yes, they are two different things, but they are a married couple. Okay. So that was a great question asked just now about RNA, what's the difference and what it does. And we're going to talk more about the difference between DNA and RNA later, but just a brief introduction to these differences and similarities. So both DNA and RNA are nucleic acids. That's what the Na stands for. But DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. If you can see down there at the bottom of your screen, and please do write that down. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. Big word there. RNA is ribonucleic acid. So we dropped the deoxy portion of the word. It's just ribonucleic acid. Okay. They're both nucleic acids, but the differences are pretty important. Number one, RNA has uracil, which is the U, and DNA has thymine, which is the T. Okay, so each of them has four base pairs. DNA has CGAT, and RNA has CGAU. And these base pairs are extremely important. They are the monomer of nucleic acids, and they allow nucleic acids to essentially, they're a code, right? So if any of you are interested in coding, we have all these different coding languages, but probably the most sophisticated coding language of them all is our genes, is DNA. And so if I switch the order of these letters, I might have CCA. If I switch that to CGA, then I produce something that is different. Okay, and that's going to be important. Another important difference is that RNA is single-stranded versus DNA, which is double-stranded. And you can see that pretty clearly in the picture. DNA is shaped in what is called a double helix. Perhaps you've heard that before, but it looks like a winding spiral. RNA would essentially just be one half of that spiral. It's a single helix.
Sir?
Yes.
Since our DNA is basically code, does that mean we're basically organic computers?
I get you. You really could think of it in that way. Yes. Now, we'll talk more about this in our next unit. But the amount of DNA that we have, it's about 3 billion base pairs. So it's a very long code. Only a portion of that code is actually useful, and we haven't fully understood. We haven't fully researched why some portions of our DNA are used and others are not. But there's all of this DNA, 3 billion base pairs, is stuffed into a single cell, and even more specifically, stuffed into the nucleus of that cell. We'll talk more about that in our next unit. But essentially what this means is that every cell in your body is unique to you. And so you could, in many ways, consider us organic computers, yes. All right. But keep in mind, both DNA and RNA are essential for all living things to function. So that's the similarity. Yes, ma'am.
Can can DNA or RNA get mutated?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a huge. That is something that we'll talk about much later, really towards the end of the course. But mutations happen all the time. Some mutations do absolutely nothing. Actually, most of the mutations that take place in your body don't do anything, and that's because they affect very small portions of your DNA, and it's just not enough to have an ultimate impact on the body. But some mutations can have extremely profound and what we call deleterious effects on your body, which means that they're damaging to you. And this is how we end up with so many different diseases and so many different genetic conditions. And sometimes it means that life is no longer possible if the mutation is severe enough. And so, yes, mutations happen. Most of the time, they don't do anything. Sometimes they do good things. For example, mutations ultimately are the reason why evolution is possible. And this is, I do this often. I get into topics that are a little bit too far ahead, but just keep in mind that mutations are common. Some mutations are bad, some are good, most don't do anything. Okay. But if I can go back to this GIF briefly, DNA is the starting point. That DNA is then transcribed into RNA. So an example would be if I were to speak to you out loud and then you transcribed everything that I was saying onto paper. You wrote it all onto paper. It's still in the exact same language, but now instead of it being verbal and audio, you've now written it on paper. So DNA to RNA is the transcription process. And then RNA to proteins is a translation process. So I'm putting it into a whole different language at this point. So my first step is I'm going to transcribe it from audio to paper. And then I'm going to translate it from English to French or from English to Mandarin. So it's a process. And we're going to talk, we have an entire unit dedicated to that. But you all are my honor students, and I want to expose you to these concepts just so you can start to make connections. All right. So here's your monomer. And again, we want to be thinking about that chart that we have. So the monomer for a nucleic acid is called a nucleotide. Please do include that additional information. It's a 5-carbon sugar, a phosphate group, and a nitrogen base. So those nitrogen bases, what I was referring to as base pairs, those are those letters A, T, G, C, U. And then the atoms that are a part of nucleic acid, because we have that phosphate group, we've got the, I should say phosphorus. We've got the atom phosphorus, the element phosphorus. And then we also have the nitrogen groups. So we've got the element nitrogen. Okay. I'm not going to do that. All right. So based on what you have from your notes, based on what you've written already, and using that word bank that's at the bottom of your screen, let's see if we can figure out this Venn diagram. We've got DNA on the left side and RNA on the right side. Of course, where the circles enter, and what am I trying to say? Where the circles overlap is where we would put the similarities between the two. So DNA, what is the official name? What's the full name for DNA?
Deoxyribonucleic.
Yeah, I know it's difficult to say. Deoxyribonucleic.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Deoxyribonucleic acid. Which one of them is double-stranded?
DNA.
DNA. Yeah. Which is found in all living organisms?
Both.
Both of them. Good. Which of them is a nucleic acid?
Both.
Both.
Good.
Both.
Which one of them has nucleotides?
Both.
Both. Good. So nucleotides are the monomer. Nucleotides are what make up all nucleic acids. So DNA and RNA. And then from there, so ribonucleic, that's obviously RNA. Which one of them has the bases A, T, C, and G?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, so I'm looking down here. Let me see if I can get my pointer. Which one of them has the bases? Okay, now that thing is blocking it. But the bases A, T, C, and G. Now you can see it. Oops.
DNA?
DNA, good. And RNA has the bases A, U, C, and G. So DNA has T, RNA has U. They both have A, C, and G. And RNA is the single stranded. So this is what our Venn diagram would look like. Could be a good idea for you to write this down or screenshot or take a picture as well. And especially for those of you who are more visual, you like to be able to interpret things in some sort of diagram.
Wait, all this is being recorded, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Miss, how do you pronounce your name again? Is it Rude or Rudd?
Rudd.
I'm sorry, I just keep forgetting.
You're fine.
But, the assembly that they had us go to, it didn't load for me at all.
Okay. Well, I would encourage you to email your counselor. I'm sure that was recorded as well, so I'm sure they can send you a recording. I don't have the recording, but if you are interested, they basically just talked about your graduation requirements and student government and fall sports and stuff like that. So it was kind of basic information, but if you do want to see it, then I would encourage you to just email your counselor. Okay. So proteins, keep in mind, these are very, very closely related. But proteins have the monomer amino acids. And I talked about these a little bit on Monday. These amino acids are connected by what are called peptide bonds. So sometimes you will hear proteins referred to as polypeptides. Keep in mind, one monomer is just the monomer, but when I start to put multiple monomers together, I get the polymer. So proteins are the polymer and amino acids are the monomer. If I combine several amino acids, I create a protein. Okay. And you can see in this image some of our amino acids. There are 20 different types. And they have abbreviations that are 3 letters long. So CYS is cysteine, GLU is glutamine, GLN is some sort of glutamine acid, alanine, serine. You do not have to memorize those. I've never had to memorize them, as you can tell, and I've taken a lot of biology. And the atoms that make up proteins are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. So similar to nucleic acids, but there's no phosphorus. Okay. Proteins are very diverse, and they essentially provide most of the functions of living organisms. So if if they're not doing one of the other things that we've already talked about, so if they're not providing short-term energy or long-term energy, or if they're not providing the genetic information, then they're doing everything else. And that's why the examples of proteins are also very diverse. We have enzymes, hormones, hemoglobin, insulin, and antibodies. Does anybody know what any of those do? What are those things?
Insulin is like sugar, right?
Yes, insulin is what allows our bodies to break down sugar. Antibodies, that's one that you probably have heard a lot about recently. Any thoughts about that?
I've never heard of it
Okay.
until now.
Okay. Okay, so antibodies would allow our body to defend itself against pathogens like bacteria and viruses. So the reason you would have heard about antibodies a lot recently is because in many places we are asking people who have already recovered from the coronavirus or from COVID-19 to donate their blood, because our blood carries specific antibodies. And if you have the antibodies to protect yourself against COVID or against the coronavirus, then you can donate your blood and give it to somebody else who's already fighting against that virus, and they have a better chance of survival. So antibodies are really our body's first line of defense, along with our white blood cells, against infection. Hemoglobin is what allows our blood to carry oxygen, so it's extremely important. Hormones do a wide variety of things. Hormones are what allows a person's reproductive system to develop and to function. Hormones are what allow your body to trigger a fight or flight response. So you may have heard of the hormone adrenaline, which allows your body to, react in specific ways when you are faced by a threat. So hormones do a lot as well. And enzymes are what allows our body to do chemical reactions quickly. Most of the chemical reactions that our bodies do would take a long time without enzymes. So enzymes speed them up. We're going to talk more about that later this week.
What is the second picture of?
This down here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what this protein is, but so without saying too much, this basically says it all. Shape matters. I don't know why I went to the next slide, but shape matters. So simply, I can have a protein that is made up of the amino acids A, B, C, and D, but I could bend that protein a specific way, or I could bend it in a different way, and I could end up with a totally different function. Okay, so the way that the protein is shaped and the way that it is interacting with itself is going to be extremely important, and we'll talk more about that later this week. But this is a 3D image of a protein, and it's got the ribbons represent a specific orientation, and then the streamers represent a different orientation. So if you're really interested in this stuff, it can get a little bit complicated, but we do talk about it in the AP class. So if you're interested in the AP class, you can take it next year. Okay, and then I guess I should have shown this slide before I started talking. Okay. Does anyone need more time here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, here's that relationship that I talked about once again. DNA holds the genetic information to make all of these proteins. And we have essentially everything in your body is a protein, or is made of several different proteins. So we need to be able to, our DNA needs to be able to code for all of these things. And it is able to do that because it is, number one, specific to you. And number two, because we have so much DNA packed into our cells. All right. So no, not Kahoot. I don't know if we have time for Kahoot. Is that open Kahoot? Let's see. Okay. Well, let's play this Kahoot. You do have 2 assignments for the day. And if you don't want to play Kahoot and you'd rather just start working on those assignments, then that works as well.
I struggle a lot with this unit. I can tell already.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. It's so different from Earth environmental science. And it's making my head hurt.
I can see it being very different than Earth and environmental science because in that class you're familiar with the things that you talk about, and you can see the things that you're talking about. In biology, we're introducing these microscopic concepts that are things you've never heard of before. Maybe you've heard of DNA, you've heard of genes, but you've never had to actually think about what those things are. So it'll become second nature to you as we start to talk more about it. And I wouldn't want you to be discouraged this early on. And like I said, that original chart, I'll go back to it. This chart here, this is really what you need to focus on. This is where you're going to get your bang for your buck. And so when we fill out the next 2 rows tomorrow for nucleic acids and proteins, you'll fully understand that that is the information that you need. And I'm a big proponent of, if you're trying to begin a journey of 1,000 miles, you just need to take 1 step. And every step that you can take is important. It's meaningful. So if you can just spend 10 minutes a day just trying to internalize this chart, it'll go a very long way. And I do believe that. But I don't think you have any reason, or anybody else in the class, to be concerned or nervous right now. Again, if I'm moving too fast, please let me know. Or if I say something that's confusing, I know that sometimes I do use words that maybe are not used in average conversation. Then please just let me know that, hey, Mr. Red, I didn't quite get that. And again, I won't take offense to it. I know that's how I can be. All right, so let's not play Kahoot. I didn't intend for the lesson to take as long as it did, but I'll give you all time to just jump into the 2 assignments for the day. One of them is called protein research, and the other one is called macromolecule matching. Again, keep in mind that all of our assignments will be due on September 1st, which is 6 days away. So if you're not able to get to something right now, you do still have time to knock it out. The protein research might take just a little bit of time because it's like more open-ended questions. But the macromolecule matching assignment should be one that you can knock out pretty quickly. So go ahead and start that. We only have 5 more minutes in class.
Oh, here, can I talk to you now about what I was going to talk to you about?
Yes, if you don't mind other people being here.
Yeah, the reason I've been absent. The reason I've been absent is because I was sad because my dad passed away on Monday.
Wow.
So I just been trying to take some time off, and I came here today because just trying to do stuff to not think about it.
I get that.
So if I'm not here some days, or might be here, then that's because why.
Okay. Well, number one, I appreciate you telling me, and I applaud your bravery and your comfort with sharing that information with the rest of your classmates too. I know that you are only beginning your process of kind of grieving and coming to terms with things, and I'm sure it probably doesn't even feel real right now. But I number one want to extend my condolences to you and your family, and definitely thinking of you and your family in this time. But take the time that you need. I know that this is going to be a long process for you, and it's quite likely that you'll still be kind of coming to terms with things before we even complete the or even after we complete the class. So take the time that you need, and let me know if there's anything that I can do to support you. Please make sure that you are in contact with the counselors. In fact, I'll send an email to them. Have you already told the counselors? Okay, I didn't hear anything from you. But I'll make sure that I send an email to the counselors, and I'll include you in that email. And yeah, I'm sorry. I know that this is going to be very difficult for you, but please know that you will have my support as you go through this process of grieving. With that, it is after 11:35 now, so you all are good to go.